Good Tuesday afternoon, Mike Naso here with an update on the tropics. We have a strengthening tropical storm in the central Atlantic that is a threat to the Leeward and potentially U.S. Virgin Islands of the Caribbean, and that is Tropical Storm Jerry, sitting right here in the central Atlantic, looking pretty well defined right now for a mid-range tropical storm, strengthening, expected to become a hurricane and then a strong hurricane, and cut it very, very close and potentially having, at the very least, indirect, if not direct, impacts on the Lesser Antilles over the next couple of days. We also have a little trough of low pressure here over the Yucatan that could do something in the Bay of Campeche before going into Mexico. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, let's get the latest on Tropical Storm Jerry as of 5 p.m. Atlantic time, which is also Eastern time. Jerry was at 12.0 north, 46.4 west, winds of 50. So it went straight to tropical storm this morning, 40 miles an hour, has been strengthening, 45, now it's up to 50, and is moving west at 23 miles per hour. It should become a hurricane sometime Wednesday, and then a strong hurricane, at least a Category 2, by the time Thursday and Friday roll around, and it will eventually feel the influence of troughiness and turn, much like Hurricane Aaron, much like Hurricane Gabrielle, much like Hurricane Umberto. However, as we saw with those storms, Bermuda, you will potentially be in the crosshairs, to say nothing of the Lesser Antilles here. And we actually have tropical storm watches in effect. We have a tropical storm watch now for Barbuda, Anguilla, St. Barthélemy, and St. Martin here in the Lesser Antilles. And that's because the tropical storm force winds already extend out a pretty far distance from the center. And as Jerry continues to move in that direction, even if he misses the islands to the north and east, the wind field of tropical storm winds, potentially hurricane winds, could clip some of those islands. So again, if you're in these islands, keep a close watch because we're likely to see more tropical storm watches and warnings, and potentially even hurricane watches or warnings if the system gets too close, which is still a possibility. The rainfall, this may change, but as of now, you could still have 2 to 4 inches in areas from Dominica all the way towards the U.S. Virgin Islands. That includes the islands I spoke about under the Tropical Storm Watch, Barbuda, Anguilla, St. Martin, and St. Barthélemy. And again, areas further south, you will be impacted by rain as well. Here's the latest visible satellite imagery right as the sun goes down. Notice this bursting here. The system is still getting a little bit of wind shear, but overall these streaks here are a sign that it's fanning out to the north. I'm very impressed with it. For a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm, Jerry is on his way to eventually becoming a hurricane, and then a powerful hurricane. Here's the wind shear map, as I mentioned. We have some wind shear barbs headed directly into the system, but not too bad. Not too bad. And this area here is slightly more favorable. And so as the system pulls into it, it'll have more ventilation and very warm water, and it will be able to intensify into a hurricane and then a strong hurricane. Now, how strong are we thinking? Well, here are the European ensembles. The good news is most of the European ensembles have the system missing the islands, like I said, but note they have another system still forming off Africa behind it, and then we're starting to see more and more indications of activity in the Western Caribbean. Sometime by the time mid to late October rolls around, that is an area we watch late season for hurricanes to brew, so we're going to keep a close eye on that. The GFS model takes Jerry out to sea, but again, very, very close. Some of the islands get clipped, and then a second system develops, and we actually have one run here showing a hurricane hitting Puerto Rico of Category 1 intensity, but that would be sometime around the 18th of October. That is not Jerry. That would be another system. So we may not be done with these waves off Africa just quite yet. And again, the GFS also shows a lot of activity in the Caribbean. So again, this hurricane season is rolling, even though we had a very, very quiet peak season. Now, this is the H-Wharf hurricane model as of 12Z Tuesday, and it takes Jerry to hurricane strength, and you are not going to like what it does with it. Watch as we see Jerry here progress towards the islands, and then by the time Friday afternoon comes, boom, the right eye wall is right over the island of Barbuda as a Category 4 hurricane, 937 millibars and 150 miles per hour or 130 knots. That is a very, very powerful strike, violent hurricane strike on the islands. Now again, if it moved just a little bit further north, you would miss the core, but you don't want it to get too close, especially if it's in the process of rapidly strengthening, which could happen. If Jerry becomes a hurricane and then starts to crank up, it could be cranking up right at the time that it would be at the longitude of the islands, so we want the latitude to be high enough to where it doesn't directly impact. Again, most of the models say it's going to just miss, but it's so early you're going to want to keep an eye out. The key messages for Jerry: number one, Jerry is forecast to strengthen and could bring tropical storm conditions to portions of the northern Leeward Islands where tropical storm watches have been issued. And secondly, as I mentioned before, heavy rainfall for the Leeward Islands Thursday, and you could have flash flooding, especially in areas of higher terrain. The Caribbean is very, very susceptible to bad flooding, especially as you get into the Greater Antilles near Haiti and all that. If it rains for an hour, you get a mudslide, so it's very bad news. So you don't want it to get too close, but we will keep an eye out. Here's a pretty cool image here of Jerry. Look at it brewing there. That's scary. I'm going to go back and forth, back and forth. Look at the way it's fanning out there. You see that? I see that hurricane shape. It's getting there. I'm very impressed with it, fanning out like that. And then we have our other little system here and the trophiness over this area near the Yucatan and Belize. I've seen many of these things spit out into the Gulf and steal a name. We call them name wasters, where they become a little tropical storm and then move into Mexico. And so we could see that. By the way, now that we have Jerry, the next name is Karen. And we'll see if we get Karen from this system over the Yucatan. As of now, nothing there. Although if we look, it is showing a little bit more life. So it's possible. I do like the shape of this one. And the environment is good. In fact, if I go back to that wind shear map, it has this beautiful anticyclone right over the top of it. And so the outflow and the environment would be very favorable. That would just be a matter of getting over water and having time to strengthen. But as of now, it's just an area of disturbed weather and trophiness and a low chance from the National Hurricane Center of Development. But we'll watch as it moves into the Bay of Campeche. Now, I know you're focused on this giant fat donut here off the Baja California. This is a hurricane, a strong hurricane, a Category 2 hurricane. This is Hurricane Priscilla. And Priscilla, as of 2 p.m. MST, was at 19.9 north, 110.8 west, winds of 110 miles per hour, so it's right on the verge of a major hurricane. It didn't get there, but 110, 112 is right there in between. So it's almost a Category 3 hurricane, moving west-northwest at 9. We do have the tropical storm watch along the coastline there of the Baja. Hurricane Priscilla should continue to move out, weaken, and then by the time it moves into areas there, it should be greatly, greatly diminished. Nevertheless, look at this satellite. That is a scary-looking hurricane. You see that? Wow. Big pinwheel donut. Slow it down a little for you. Let me see here. If I slow this down. Yeah. Look at that. Brewing right over that eye there, right around the eyes where you'd have those sustained winds of 110 miles an hour. So a lot of times Category 2 hurricanes are like this. They're more of the fat donut. So do you want a big fat donut Category 2 or a tightly wound Category 4? But what a monster hurricane brewing there off the Baja. Key messages with Priscilla. Number one, tropical storm conditions are possible within the tropical storm watch area tonight into Wednesday. Areas in the Baja California Peninsula should continue to monitor the progress of Priscilla. Number two, heavy rainfall is going to impact areas of the Baja, and that could lead to heavy rainfall across west central Mexico from today into Thursday, and then into the desert southwest late this weekend into the weekend, and that could cause flash flooding. Finally, swells from Priscilla will go all the way into areas of central Mexico, and that could cause life-threatening surf and rip currents. Stay out of the water as those waves propagate away from Priscilla. And there's all that information in Spanish. That's not the only game in town in the Pacific. We have Octave, one time a hurricane, and Octave is going to continue to weaken as it drags towards the east. We're not going to have to deal with Octave, so there's Octave right there, and then is getting sucked into Priscilla's circulation as Priscilla moves on along the Baja. So again, we're going to watch all of this. Right now, the focus in the Atlantic is on Jerry. We're going to watch it become a hurricane and potentially a strong hurricane. Does it take a track where it misses the islands and misses Bermuda? That's very possible. It's also possible it misses the islands and impacts Bermuda directly. It's also possible that it strikes the islands and then misses Bermuda. Or it could strike the islands and strike Bermuda and be a memorable hurricane. We just don't know at this point. We're going to watch it very, very carefully. I'm Mike Naso with the latest on Jerry, and I will talk to you next time. And Priscilla.